We have a very special guest here on the Rebellion today. Her name is Steffi Cole. You may know her from her YouTube channel, Steffi Cole. She is an up-and-comer here in the Liberty movement. You will probably also know her from the Austin Peterson campaign, where she was a graphic designer. She trained volunteers. She is absolutely on the rise as a rising star in this Liberty movement. I can't wait to see what she's going to do. We are lucky enough to have her here with us on the Rebellion today. Welcome to the show. Steffi, how are you?
Thank you so much. I am so happy to be here.
We're excited to have you. And I'm very excited to just hear what we're going to talk about in terms of your book review today. And I understand that you do these often.
Yeah, honestly, it just started happening organically. So I started reading books because I wanted to gain more knowledge, and I got really excited and I wanted to start sharing some quotes and, books with the people on Twitter. And so I realized that you can't post a video over a certain amount of time on Twitter. I think it's about 2 minutes. And so one day I was about to post a video that was over 2 minutes, and I'm like, oh no, I can't do this. So I'm like, where should I put the video? So I just put it on YouTube, and I'm like, well, this is kind of fun. So I just started making YouTube book review videos, and then it went to movie reviews, and then it went to, now I'm cooking and shooting and singing and doing other types of Liberty videos.
It's very very Gary Vaynerchuk. Just create as much material as you can and get it out there and let people stumble upon whatever it is that you're doing.
Yeah. So if I understand correctly, this Sunday, which will be yesterday for those who are listening, you're going to be promoted on the Libertarian Republic website every Sunday with a new video of some sort.
Yes, so it is Sundays with Steffi. So yep, every Sunday there will be a new Steffi video. Look forward.
So was that Austin's idea or was that your idea?
Was that Austin's idea? Well, it was kind of the different people working for the Libertarian Republic. They just helped come up with the idea with me. So everyone thought it was a good idea all at the same time. And so here we are. Again, things are just happening naturally. I mean, I don't know how they're coming up. They just are.
So I thought that we would start out with the book review itself because I have like way too many books to read, and to be able to have somebody read it for me and tell me what the important parts are, and a book on Liberty on top of it is just perfect.
It's icing on the cake.
So what's the book you've picked for us today?
All right, so we have Back on the Road to Serfdom. So not to be confused with The Road to Serfdom by F.A. Hayek. Back on the Road to Serfdom is actually edited by Thomas Woods. So you may know him. He does Liberty Classroom, which I actually really love listening to.
Yeah, I've
it's
heard
basically
of him.
I'm pretty sure most people in this audience know Tom Woods.
Oh yeah, he's amazing. And I wish I could go on his cruise that's going to Alaska, but unfortunately, I can't afford it.
You and me both. Someday, Steffi, we will be on the Liberty cruise. What is it? Is it the Contra cruise? Is what it is?
Yeah, the Contra cruise. Yeah, it's in July, I believe.
That'd be pretty cool.
So yeah, so anyway, so I'll be talking about Back on the Road to Serfdom, the resurgence of statism. And so first, before I read this book, I actually read The Road to Serfdom by F.A. Hayek. So this was written in 1944, and it was meant for a British audience. And so it's about the dangers of statism and how central planning leads to totalitarianism. This is a pretty old book. It was definitely hard for me to follow. There were a lot of like German terms and a lot of people that they mentioned that were just nobody that I've ever heard of before. And so actually on Twitter, when I announced that I had just finished Back on the Road to Serfdom, somebody said, is this mostly the same as the original? And what does Woods add? And so Thomas Woods actually responded to that tweet that person wrote, and he said, no way. In my opinion, The Road to Serfdom is almost completely outdated. And so it sounds like that's why they wrote Back on the Road to Serfdom. And I completely agree with him. I mean, The Road to Serfdom has a lot of old examples, definitely from Nazi Germany and Italy. So I was ready to hear something that was more recent. And so that's actually what Back on the Road to Serfdom is going to give you. So Back on the Road to Serfdom was written in 2010. It's more of an American view. And so it's actually a compilation of essays by 10 different scholars, and Thomas Woods writes the introduction. And so this book is about why and how the government has gotten so big, and basically the consequences of giving into government intervention. So I'll kind of tell you a little bit about what is inside of this book and why it might be interesting to you. I absolutely loved it. So first, you're going to learn about the history of economic policy and crises in America. Just takes you on a nice timeline of everything that's happened. And then it's going to talk about Thomas Jefferson and Alexander Hamilton. I love the founding fathers, so I totally loved this chapter. And so it's about how they differed on their ideas of government intervention. Obviously, Alexander Hamilton was a nationalist. And then you're going to learn about Sweden and their government and the negative effects of the welfare state that they have there. And there's actually a quote that I pulled out of the chapter on Sweden. So it says, "What we are now seeing in Sweden is the perfectly logical consequence of the welfare state. When handing out benefits and thereby taking away the individual's responsibility for his or her own life, a new kind of individual is created, the immature, irresponsible, and dependent." And that's exactly what we're seeing in America. I mean, people are becoming incredibly dependent on the government. So you definitely can see parallels to us and Sweden right now. You're going to learn about protectionism in this book. There are great examples and analogies to help you learn different concepts like comparative advantage, tariffs, free trade, infant industries. These are all things that you're going to see in a lot of economics books. Like even, Human Action talks about these things. And then you're going to learn about entrepreneurship and government intervention. So I pulled out a quote from the book on corporatism. So it says, "What is less obvious is that the road to serfdom is not being paved by government alone. In many cases, the business community supports and enables the growth of government power. The reason is that big government brings ample benefits to big business." So business and government work together to benefit each other. And there's actually a really powerful example in Back on the Road to Serfdom, and it's about Philip Morris, which is the country's largest tobacco company. And so Philip Morris supported a bill to increase federal regulation of tobacco. This was during Obama's years. And Philip Morris supported it because it would make it easier for their company to stay on top of the game, because there would be added overhead costs, advertising and marketing regulations, and these are things that smaller companies just can't do. So Philip Morris was all for these regulations. So yet again, big companies are in with big government because they help each other out. And then you're also going to see discussion about morality and markets. Another chapter that I really found to be interesting was the discussion of religion and the state. I had never seen Bible passages being compared to statism before. And it's amazing to me that the Bible is actually quite libertarian, a lot of the scripture passages inside. And so for example, "Thou shalt not steal." So it's not "Thou shalt not steal unless you do it for the purpose of giving the proceeds to a deserving third party." That makes so much sense. So it's like, why can't we just keep following that? So that was definitely one of my favorite chapters. It was mind-blowing. I mean, all of the examples from the Bible that they picked out. And then another chapter was on how statism affects culture. And one really cool fact that I learned, I was like, yay, I love fun facts. That's one thing about me. I love sharing them all the time. So, the ship in Gilligan's Island, that's called the SS Minnow?
Yeah.
So the name SS Minnow, it was actually named after Newton Minnow, who was the chairman of the FCC in 1961. And he made a speech, and he basically called television America's vast wasteland. And he wanted to try to kind of control television. So things like that. I mean, I just learned so many cool facts and examples that I can use in daily conversations. So after reading Back on the Road to Serfdom, I would definitely say read both books. Even though this book, The Road to Serfdom by F.A. Hayek, was much more boring and difficult to get through. Back on the Road to Serfdom, I'm sorry, Hayek. I feel so bad, like, because his face is right on the book, and I feel so bad every time I like talk about him with him staring at me on the book. But anyways, so in Back on the Road to Serfdom, they actually reference Hayek quite a bit, so it definitely helps, just so you can kind of draw the two together and compare them. So I would say battle through it. It's definitely worth it. And basically my takeaway from Back on the Road to Serfdom is it's so important to keep educating yourself about examples of statism in our world. You just have to keep remembering that this is going to continue to happen. So I really hope that in the future they keep making more books like this just to remind us, hey, this is a problem. It's not going away. Because I think we forget so easily. And we think that, everything's fine. The government's not bad anymore. Yes, they are. They're still bad. They're still trying to take advantage of us.
So I
would say.
I think the reminder is great, but you're not like a newcomer to Liberty. You understand the principles. Was there anything in the book that changed your mind, made something specifically more clear?
I would say not really. I mean, it pretty much just drove home the points that I already kind of knew, but it just gave me more ammo. It gave me more examples to use and be like, all you people who say we can trust everything that the government does, here's some reasons why we can't.
And are these...
It's just helping to strengthen my argument.
Are these specific examples unique to America?
Yeah, I would say so. Yeah, there's definitely, examples in here, again, about like big business in America. I mean, there's also examples from other countries in Back on the Road to Serfdom, too.
Okay. Now, and that brought me to that point, when you started talking about this kind of this evil alliance between big business and big government, when Banks and I will read the Anti-Federalist Papers, they called it the aristocratic combination. Was there any type of reference to any of the Anti-Federalists in this at all, or is it basically more of just the more of a current type of understanding?
Well, I mean, they talked about Jefferson and Hamilton, so they talked about both of them and how they compared.
Well, I hope that they mention Hamilton in at least a somewhat dismissive way. I can only hope.
What's crazy is...
Oh, yeah. They talked about, how he believed in bailouts, and obviously, how bailouts have negative consequences.
Yeah. What's funny is by any stretch of a comparison between the founders, especially the Federalists, and the guys we have today, including Hamilton, Hamilton would be a welcome reprieve from the nightmare that is the tyrannical status that we have now, I think.
Yeah, that perspective is a little sad.
True.
But
I think he kind of got the ball rolling, though, unfortunately. He started the process of bigger government.
Agreed. So what's interesting here is that I have a feeling that a lot of people seeing a video like that and having like enough points mentioned, like I could pretend that I read the book at this point. I'd be like, yeah, they talk about Philip Morris once and that the Bible is kind of libertarian, and which I think when there's so much out there and it's hard to absorb so much, I feel at least that that I got a little bit of ammo. You obviously got more, and I like ammo. Like it's good to make like a store of ammo.
Makes me want to go read the book now, though.
Yeah,
it does.
For sure. Like there's a when she's going through that, I love debate. I'm sure that it is not it's not a surprise to a lot of people out there that like debate with people who are on a different understanding than I am. To have all of those types of examples where you can just go through history and just go through, I don't want to say bullet points, but really kind of just educate people on example after example after example of what happened and why, you know, their premise is flawed in the first place. Like, those things are what, you know, what we need, so that when we are having conversations with people out there, we can make those points, you know, without any shadow of a doubt, you know, and maybe just plant that question mark in their head. You know, it's not that you're going to change their mind, especially if there's a whole audience that's standing there in front of you, but maybe, you know, you put that little bit of doubt right in the back of their mind, and now it's an itch that they have to scratch, and they've got to approach it.
So that kind of leads to how people come to Liberty, and we all have our different stories. I'm actually fascinated with all the stories. I have some friends, a tree fell on their house, and they didn't have power for like the 2 weeks that it was being fixed, and so they watched a lot of YouTube videos, and they just stumbled upon a Ron Paul YouTube video, and that was like how they found it. So we'd love to know your origin story.
Sure.
When did Liberty start creeping in?
Well, I'll take you back to 2008 when I was a very different person. So I was in social work school, and I voted for Obama. I was a Democrat, and I was so excited. Yeah, I'm sorry.
No, I'm kidding.
Oops. Maybe you can edit that part out.
No. This is what makes it so much better. This, knowing where people came from, I'm an old neocon, so it's one of those things to see, you know, when people finally find Liberty where they started. So I apologize for interrupting you for comedic relief, but I think this is awesome.
Interrupt me. I don't mind. Yeah, so I voted for him, and I was trying to put myself back into my mindset back then. So I remember being really excited that he was our first African American president. I really, you know, like diversity, and so I appreciated that about him. But then in about 2009, so my boyfriend, he was going to a business university at the time, and he would when he would have he would use me as his study person. So
if you could repeat the last like 8 seconds, we lost you for a second.
Oh, sure. So then, after voting for Obama, I would say around 2009-ish, when my boyfriend was at a business university, he used to teach me about his economics classes and what he was learning. And so anyways, so he started showing me videos like Milton Friedman. We actually watched a lot of conspiracy videos, Alex Jones, Jesse Ventura. So conspiracy theories did kind of reel me in a little bit. It at least caught my attention. And so my boyfriend would like teach me different concepts, the housing bubble. I mean, it was all so confusing to me, and he would draw diagrams. And so after debating with him a lot, because obviously I was still in my Democrat mindset, I finally started coming to the other side. And so in 2010, we went to our very first Tea Party rally in our local area here. And then that's what kind of started leading me to the Ron Paul movement. And so I got to go to 2 Ron Paul rallies in 2012. And that was when I first felt so energized. I had never felt so excited before in all my life than when I was at those rallies. And then I started liking Gary Johnson after I knew Ron Paul wasn't going to win. So I'm not still super into Gary Johnson anymore, but that's a part of my past, obviously.
Gary Johnson and Obama. Wow. I'm just teasing.
So I voted for Gary Johnson in 2012 and 2016. And in 2016, I watched the Libertarian Party presidential debates by John Stossel. He was hosting them. And that's where I actually first saw Austin Peterson speaking. And I didn't know Austin Peterson at the time. I just remember saying, wow, he's really young. And I really agree with a lot of what he's saying. You know, I wish he had a chance of winning this. Mm-hmm. And so then I heard Austin Peterson was coming to Michigan to speak at Hillsdale College after the election. So this was in November of 2016. And so I actually went to see him speak for the very first time. I didn't actually get to meet him in person and shake his hand because I had to leave early. But then I started getting really involved in this ninja movement. I don't know if you all have heard about the ninja group.
Tell everybody about it, though.
We've got our own little social club. It's really cool. Lots of support in that group. And so I got more and more involved in that. And then Austin Peterson announced that he was running for U.S. Senate. And so I just naturally started getting really excited. And so I started going on Twitter. So before, I only had like 300 something followers, I think, on Twitter, because I had used my Twitter for an Etsy business that I had a few years ago. And so I just started tweeting out about Austin Peterson and annoying people like crazy. Like I'd throw his name in like everywhere. I'm surprised I didn't get kicked off of Twitter. And then I just became a volunteer for his campaign. And I have some graphic design background. I used to design graphics for fun when I had a Beanie Baby website back in the 90s. So I just started designing his graphics for his campaign. So a lot of the graphics that you see are ones that I made. Not the logo, though. I didn't design the logo. And so I did a lot of social media stuff, phone banking, training volunteers, trying to energize them, get them to feel more confident. Because a lot of phone banking is being confident and feeling comfortable with talking to people, as I'm sure you all know. Both of you, doing the campaigning.
We didn't do much of that.
Yeah, it's scary, when you have anxiety, which I have anxiety, and so you really have to get through those walls that you build in your head. And so then after Austin lost, I wanted to keep going. I wasn't going to let it get me down. And so I actually went to some parades for Justin Amash over the summer. So that was really cool. And then I started being a brand ambassador for 1776 United. So that's kind of cool. I get to wear their T-shirts and just advertise them.
Yeah, the guy who runs 1776 United actually lives like 20 minutes from Shane's house. And we've been meaning to have him on the show. Yeah.
And we don't have any T-shirts.
Oh, I'm sure you can get him on the show.
Yeah, I've contacted him, and for whatever reason,
right
the scheduling just hasn't worked out.
I'm wearing my Betsy Ross flag T-shirt here.
Very cool.
Yeah. So basically, I just started doing a lot more social media, promoting merchandise, promoting Liberty ideas. I've been reading a lot of books. I'm kind of using this downtime for me, because I've been doing so much for other Liberty people that it's time for me to take care of myself and my Liberty journey. So that's what I've been doing. I became a member of YAL just a few months ago. So
are you coming to the Memphis meetup?
For YAL?
Yeah.
No, I'm gonna hopefully go to the YALCon in Detroit though, because I'm based in Michigan here.
Oh,
Okay.
I thought you were out of Missouri. What part of Michigan are you out of?
I know, you'd think I lived in Missouri because of how involved I was. No, I went to Missouri 3 times last year. But I am from the Detroit area, so yep, I'm in the suburbs of Detroit, about 40 minutes away from there.
North or?
So I am in Southeast Michigan.
Okay. Yeah. So no, and that's the thing. I asked because I'm also from Michigan. My wife is from Michigan. She's from Clarkston.
Clarkston. Okay. I'm in the Commerce area.
Okay, great.
So
yeah,
yes.
right on. So
we're pretty close. Yes.
Michiganders all in the house here. That's pretty cool. With what you're doing in terms of kind of building your own brand and really getting yourself out there to make a future. What are your desires in terms of what do you want to do in the Liberty movement in the future? What's the big dream?
I think about that all the time, honestly. And, some days I'm not sure. Some days I'm like, is this worth it? Should I keep going? What am I risking? But you know what? There's no turning back now. And so I think if anything, I just want to keep being that positive force, that motivating force, get people involved, get people excited about candidates. I think I can be really useful, obviously during campaign season, trying to uplift the different Liberty candidates that I find to be really good. And I hope to build my YouTube channel. I mean, it's pretty fun. I'm learning a lot. I use my phone to record my videos, so maybe I'll invest in some better equipment at some point. But I would just say I love social media. I love the marketing aspect of it. And so I just want to keep going in that direction.
So no plans for actually running for a seat somewhere within Michigan or maybe within the federal government, huh?
Not at this time.
Oh, man.
I mean, seeing how much
That's not a
seeing
no,
how
though.
much you and no, right, it's not at this time, you know, and
Yeah.
if anything, I think one day maybe I might move up north in Michigan where it's, you know, more rural and quiet, and it might be an easier entry into government because you don't have as much competition maybe,
Yeah.
and people have better values up north in rural areas. At least that's what I'm thinking.
There's
So that's my plan in the back of my head.
I think it's great. You know, the fact that you have some direction, that you are doing something that you are absolutely passionate about and what makes you happy. I talk about this kind of stuff with the podcast all the time is, you know, when people leave high school and you know, even senior citizens, you know, are you doing something in life that makes you happy? Are you doing what you're passionate about? And a lot of times they're linked. You know, if you're doing something you're extremely passionate about, a lot of the times the products of that are going to make you extremely happy. There might be some frustration along the road, but, you know, with who was it? Was it Thomas Paine that said that heaven knows how to affix a price, you know, such celestial as liberty, right? And like that's this, you know, if that's what you're fighting for, if that's what drives you, what makes you passionate, to see some type of inroads, whether, you know, they're big or small, I think that is an amazing thing that you're that young and you're already on that path now. I think it's awesome. Well, yeah, Banks was saying that I was jealous of the fact that you've gotten started at this at a much earlier age, and you know, maybe there's a part
I'm
of
just
it,
teasing
but
you,
there's that wisdom. And it's not even wisdom. It's just when you finally find what you're passionate about in life and you start doing it, and it brings you all that joy. It's all you want for everybody else out there as well. You want them to find what they're passionate about, what they're happy about. That way, you've got a different kind of culture. You've got a culture that is, you know,
Happy?
striving and reaching and finding purpose in their life, which makes people happy. And I think that is a really cool thing, Steffi.
Yeah, and honestly, my goal is to be able to have something in the liberty movement be my job, because I am a social worker for my job, but one day I really would like to completely fulfill that passion if I'm able to financially support myself, either through YouTube or whatever else I'm doing. That would be great.
Well, there's never been more opportunities for anybody to be able to pursue multiple avenues. Even if you fail, you can get back up and do another one
And reach that niche.
like just because of the internet and every other option there is out there.
Yeah.
To be able to have a podcast and buy the equipment even 20 years ago would have been impossible.
Crazy. You couldn't broadcast it anywhere even then.
Yeah, I find
And
that pretty
nowadays
amazing.
with like Patreon and, you know, the different sites where you can support different artists, I mean, it makes it possible financially too.
Yeah, absolutely. So, you know, and I have some questions for you, just regular old questions is, you know, in terms of, you know, the current movement out there, what do you think about this 2020 election cycle that's going to come up? Do you have some predictions on what might happen? And is there a person out there that you want to run in this race that is not declared yet?
So I'm a libertarian. I was a member of the Libertarian Party last year, but I'm no longer a member anymore. But I'm still libertarian in my values. And so in my heart of hearts, the one libertarian that really sticks out to me is Larry Sharpe. And I really wish that he would run for president because I would wholeheartedly support him. The other libertarians that I've heard of, like Adam Kokesh, I'm just not really sure, you know, if I can get behind him with full confidence. I definitely would not be voting for any of the Democrats. Tulsi Gabbard is probably one of the only ones that I do have some respect for, just because of her views on, ending the drug war and bringing our troops home, which I really admire. I ultimately think, I really wish I didn't say this, but I think Trump is going to win.
Yeah. Almost
No
seems like a
matter what
foregone
we do.
conclusion right now, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, we have, this clown car of Democrats coming into the circus, and it's just a joke. I mean, it's really funny and entertaining, but it's nobody I would want to be a president. So I guess Trump is the best thing we have right now.
Yeah, I don't think most of those guys want to be president either. I think they just want to write a book and walk off into the sunset with a boatload of money at some point.
I mean, capitalism is appealing to everybody, even the Bernie Sanders of the world.
That's right.
So
that is true.
So you posted on Twitter and asked if anybody was going to had any questions for you, and you actually got a bunch of responses. Some of the questions are funnier than others. There's one about if one train left Chicago at 3 p.m. and another train left Boston at 1 p.m., what time would they both run out of bourbon?
Oh,
your followers
I was like, oh no, do I need to get out my pen and paper and calculate this math problem here?
So, but there are some that are more light-spirited that I think would be interesting. Apparently, people want to know, and you haven't told them yet, which is
I know. I said I'm saving them for the rebellion. I'm not answering.
Not doing it now, huh?
So, what's your favorite color? Seems like one that people should know.
Pink? I would say pink.
Okay.
I have pink earbuds, so yes.
Here's one that's a little, slightly on the creepy side. Cremation or body burial? These are Steffi's followers. I can't help it.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, naturally, I'm actually Jewish, and so we normally believe in body burial, ashes to ashes, dust to dust. I've become increasingly interested in being planted as a tree one day. Like, they have all these cool back to nature types of burials, which I love nature. I love gardening, so I've kind of thought about them a little bit, but I think ultimately I'll just be buried. Not cremated.
I love that idea. I have always thought that I would probably be cremated, but the back to earth type things where they are, making you basically plant food for a tree, I think is a really neat prospect. I mean, think about that someday. I mean, I like to do these kind of things just because, conversation's great and all that fun stuff. The idea of possibly being food for something like, say, an oak tree, and having that oak tree mature to maybe 300 years, right? Where maybe part of you is part of that tree. And then at some point, somebody harvests that tree.
Makes a table out of it.
They make an amazing piece of, furniture, whether it's a table or where we sit around and we talk about liberty in terms of a podcast or something like that. Like that, if generations down the line, if I was, successful enough to have, a large tract of land somewhere and have, my kids and their kids and generations after them inherit that land, that would be a really neat thing to do, is have, hey man, at some point this tree needs to be harvested, and when it does, make a table out of it and eat around it. Like, that would be a really neat thing.
Yeah, it really brings life full circle.
Yeah.
I like the beauty of it.
We're actually at a period where all this history is being recorded in such an amazing way. Podcasts and in 300 years, people will be able to go back and look at your Facebook feed.
Yeah, it's better than a journal.
Yeah, I find it somewhat disturbing. But I wonder how people are going to evolve to look back at their ancestors when it's just so public and so out in the open.
Yeah.
Yeah, I actually reference my Facebook page to help remind me about my journey through the Liberty Movement, because I used to post articles, about Ron Paul, and you could kind of see my journey. So I actually look through that stuff to just remind myself of where I came from.
That's very cool. So what is the last subject where you've had a big change of mind. For me, it was the fact that intellectual property enforced by the government is not a good idea, in my opinion. But what was yours? The last thing that you struggled with and didn't understand the why behind it or the economics behind it?
So you mean when I first got into the liberty movement?
No, like at first you have a bunch of things change. Your whole paradigm just shifts. But the last thing that was a big struggle for you, like that you just changed your mind on. So the most recent, I guess, recent thing where you made a whole 180 on an issue.
I would say, well, I used to actually be for abortion, so I wasn't always pro-life. So I would say most recently I was trying to track what year I became more pro-life, and I think it was around 2016, 2017-ish. And I became increasingly into gardening, and I kind of compare life to planting my seeds in my garden. So I've just become increasingly respectful of life, and I actually saw the Unplanned movie recently, so that further emphasized my views. But I would say that's definitely a 180 for me, because I used to be very gung-ho. It's your body, your choice, because that's a libertarian view that I used to hold.
Yeah, I think the Libertarian Party is split. I guess sometimes it's about 50-50.
It's pretty split on this.
I know that a lot of people at the 2016 Libertarian Convention, I was there, they were upset at Austin for being a pro-life libertarian. So it's still it might be one of the most contentious issues within the Libertarian Party itself.
I think just in the liberty movement itself. I mean, the whole idea, and there are people who are out there that are very mainstream Republicans that are not. I mean, look at Tomi Lahren. When you look at a lot of people who are out there still believe that, hey, this is not something you touch. It's you better leave it alone as government.
So as somebody who has changed their mind, you might have a specific thought of what the best way to change other people's minds is, especially maybe women. What do you think is that best way?
Well, I think from what I've learned, when I first got into the liberty movement, I used to debate with people, and I lost a lot of friends that way, actually. A lot of my friends who are Democrats. Yeah, and so debating with people and yelling at them is definitely not the answer. I've learned to listen and just hear the people out and hear what their concerns are. It's like, what are they really worried about? And then just try to make some gentle suggestions or put some facts in their mind to kind of contemplate. And I think if you're just more gentle and not so direct and accusatory, then they'll be more receptive to what you're saying.
Yeah, I definitely agree. There's a way with words, and if you can put those words together and make sure that people know that you care about them. I have great conversations with my sisters, who are sadly all socialists.
So is my sister, yeah.
But I'm lucky enough that they know I love them and they love me, and so we can have conversations forever, and that's never lost. But establishing that with a stranger, maybe not the love part necessarily, but at least the part that, hey, I value you as a person and I care about you, while making the argument. And that's something that's not always easy to do within the political framework there.
And I always say kill them with kindness. I mean, that's kind of been my philosophy on social media too. I don't like it when people are arguing with each other and calling each other names. That's not helping anybody. It's just making social media, more of a negative platform. So I'm just trying to be that kind person. Even if you disagree with me, I'll still be nice to you. I'll still be your friend. And so we need more of that so that we can just communicate with each other and have that open conversation.
So any subjects which you're still maybe not sure of your position, or a subject which other libertarians fight with you about, maybe not being purist enough or something like that?
Yeah, I definitely struggle on animal rights, because personally I'm a vegetarian. And so, I don't eat meat. But then I wonder, should we have laws protecting animals, from factory farming or, from being abused? And I've had a lot of debates with people on this, because I am for smaller government. And obviously with smaller government, you don't have so many regulations. And so I'm like, where do you draw the line? Should we be protecting these innocent animals. So I struggle because I'm not really sure.
I think that's a very human point you make, and I say that too because there's that that 100% pure liberty loving person that says, hey, animals don't have any rights. But then again, I'm also one of those people that will stop when I see a dog that's on the side of the road, block traffic, and adopt that little guy right there on the spot, throw him in the back of my truck, tell my wife to drive the truck home. And, there is a very soft spot. So I think that is, that confliction is a very human confliction to have.
I actually don't hear people talking about this dilemma that much. I think about it every so often. And I used to wonder, well, in like 1,000 years, is this going to be something that we look back upon or like, oh, I can't believe that we ate meat or something like that. I think at the very least, we can agree on some basic tenets of, well, maybe like torturing animals is really, really bad.
Yeah.
But then you have the horrible discussion if you're a libertarian, like a consistent libertarian, means you don't like the state at all in the end. Well, who protects that dog who's tortured or something?
Yeah.
Exactly. How local do you make that? Would that just be in your local city? Would that be a law there?
Well,
or would that be a federal mandate?
And maybe that's it. I think you hit the nail on the head. I think it's local, right? Because here in a farming community, there is bound to be more animal suffering in terms of just their daily type of lives, whether it's livestock or domestic animals. Like it's going to be different than, say, a suburb or even an urban area. And people could have that argument that while some of these farms and things like that are inhumane, a lot of people who are in the urban area or in the rural areas will say that keeping a dog inside of an apartment for 11 or 12 plus hours a day, or 23 hours a day, I should say, is also somewhat cruel and inhumane. So when you look at it, it does, if you get down to that local level where there is a little more homogenous type culture, I think that's probably where you work most of that out.
Right. Or even like dog fighting in Detroit, for example, that's a huge problem there, but it might not be a problem so much in suburban areas.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And that's a really cool one. One that I struggle with a lot is the borders, in terms of, I really think I know where my head is at, but do you have a pretty made up position on what the flow of humans and everything else in terms of policy should be?
Well, I always say I want to go back to the Ellis Island approach. In terms of the details, the nitty gritty, I mean, I'm not set on everything. What do we do with the illegal immigrants who are already here? I know it would cost a lot of money to find them all and deport them. So I don't know all the answers, and I'm hoping that by reading all my books, I'll kind of learn a thing or two about immigration and to help lead me in the right direction. So I know a lot of things on the surface, but I want to dig deeper so I can have those answers.
It never really ends. You think about one question makes like 10 other questions pop up. So what are like the next few books you're excited about reading?
Well, I actually have another book, and it's called The Founding Gardeners, because I love gardening so much. This is actually about the founding fathers and their love for gardening. So I'm like, this is so cool. I can relate to them. And I'm reading it in the spring, right during gardening season. I hope to read The Law by Bastiat.
Oh.
I like to read the classics.
Yeah.
That's what I'm trying to do first. Knock out the classics. 1984, I want to read Rothbard. And then I'll just, start working on other books that are less popular, I guess you would say.
Very cool. The gardening thing is interesting. One of my favorite things is to work on my dad's property. It's less gardening and more building walls. But I have
building walls.
Jeez.
Oh, dear.
So yeah, there are walls there. It's private walls. But I fell into that one without even noticing.
It just walked right into it.
But
you enjoy building walls in your spare time.
Yeah, we know who Banks is. All right.
But Lyndon B. Johnson's wife, Lady Bird,
Yeah.
was her nickname. She loved gardening and has a plethora of quotes about like beauty and gardening and nature. And I fell on them by accident. I didn't know her nickname, and I was reading. I was like, "Oh, this woman is so interesting." I read like a dozen quotes or so, and then I found out it was her, and she's married to Lyndon B. Johnson, who I mean, a statist like most of them.
Oh, and larger than most of them.
And
yeah, I mean, there's so many good quotes out there, and I always have to check who actually said the quote because I'm like, is this person someone I really want to support? I really like their quote.
So I thought about that. We did a poll on, I think it was Twitter and Facebook the other day, asking if people quoted anybody, even if they didn't agree with them, or just people they agreed with. And actually, most people said they quoted anybody, regardless of whether they were good or bad people, as long as the quote itself
was
solid, they'd quote them.
Yeah, why not?
Well, because we're scared of people's
of association. I'm not.
Yeah, I tend not to. I try to check my people first before I quote them.
Shane has no fear.
I just don't care.
He's stared death straight in the face. And
public ridicule, bring it on. Let's go.
So we'll find you quoting Karl Marx. And,
sure.
And Hitler,
Hitler, all these guys. You know.
Hitler actually has a few insightful quotes. Not, I won't say good, but insightful.
He does. Absolutely.
He does.
Do you have a favorite quote by any chance? Not of Hitler.
I would say my quote is actually not so much about government. It's actually the Serenity Prayer. So I don't have it memorized in my head, but it's basically just about, accepting things, changing the things you can change. It really motivates me and helps kind of ease my anxieties about life. So I typically like quotes that just motivate me and make me think positively. Basically, self-affirmations.
Love it.
Very cool.
So I don't know if you've listened to any of our other interviews, Steffi, but towards the end of the show, we like to definitely keep it even more lighthearted. This has been a great lighthearted interview, and I've really enjoyed it. We like to do a lightning round, and if you're up for it, this is just whatever answer comes to the tip of your tongue first, and we'll just go through them. All right, so favorite book?
Oh, boy. I'm going to say Liberty Defined by Ron Paul. That's the most recent one that I really liked.
Okay. Your favorite founding father?
Thomas Jefferson. I've got his socks.
Thomas Jefferson socks. That's great. Yes. Do you have a favorite sports team?
No, I'm not really into sports.
Do you have a favorite
That's actually the right answer.
Yeah, it's a dead ringer answer. Do you have a favorite DIY show then?
DIY show? I don't really watch very many. I like House Hunters, but I know that's not a DIY show.
I was wondering if you had something like a Chip and Joanna Gaines or something like that.
I have watched that, but I'm not a huge fan.
Okay, and the last question for all the Marvels: cats or dogs?
Ooh, dogs. 100%.
I'm looking at a picture of Steffi and Sundays, or let me see what it is here. The Sundays with Steffi. Is that something that's ongoing?
Yeah, it's the thing we talked about in the beginning.
It's going to be.
Yeah.
Actually, yes, this is a new development as of this past week.
Right. So you're there. What kind of dog is that?
That is a Bichon Maltese.
Is it yours?
Her name is Zoe.
Okay.
No, she's my boyfriend's dog, actually.
Zoe's her name. How old is she?
She is 13 years old.
Oh, wow. She doesn't look that old. She ages well.
She's very healthy.
Yeah. Well, it's been an absolute pleasure, Steffi.
Anything else you need to plug on the show before we finish out? Websites?
Definitely follow me on social media because that's where I am the most. I am quite addicted, to be honest. You can follow me on Twitter at Steffi_Cole, Cole, on Instagram at Steffi_Cole. Even on Goodreads, you can follow all the books that I'm reading and all the books that I want to read. So goodreads.com/Steffi_Cole. We have a little pattern going here with the Steffi_Cole.
That's good marketing. Yeah,
I was gonna say it's great.
Yes.
Very cool. Well, we'll make sure to include as many of those as we can in the show notes, and it's been really cool to have you on the show.
Yes, thank you so much. I enjoyed my time a lot.
Thank you so much for joining us again, Steffi.
That was really fun, Shane.
That was, yeah, Steffi Cole. I mean, I guess for as long as I've kind of been in politics, kind of following the Austin Peterson campaign here for Senate in Missouri, she was one of those people that kept popping up, and just over and over and over again. And I'll tell you, I owe her a lot because she definitely helped us grow during that time as well. I mean, she is a force to be reckoned with on social media for sure.
Yeah, you had mentioned her name quite a few times, but I didn't really know who she was until I've gotten onto Twitter only recently.
Yeah.
I find it such a fun place.
It is. It's
and
cool.
Most of what I hear from people is that Twitter's just like this horrible environment where people just hate each other. And I'm like, I have almost no followers, and I still have fun.
Yeah.
And it's different than Facebook or Instagram. There's some kind of natural reach, even for weird fringe ideas like ours. Like
and there's more of a connection too.
Yeah, and you interact more directly with people.
You do.
Even if they don't respond to you, you feel like, hey, they can't miss this.
Right. Well, and
something like that.
I always felt like that. I always felt like there was a much more communication on a rapid type of sense, where it was a lot more. I don't know, just a very natural way to communicate with anybody and everybody, and that was a cool thing. Like there was, as you're becoming, kind of just bigger at that time, right? And I say, getting a greater following.
You had a lot of fun during the campaign. You went up to like 14,000 followers.
Yeah,
getting some amazing reach
in less than a year. And so to be able to do that, it wasn't me. I mean, it was people who were following the campaign, that were excited, that were sharing and putting this all together. And I mean, a lot of effort went into all of it. A lot of hard work, and I mean, I think that's probably why I got so dang resentful. Is where when they started really cracking down, and you started to see things like blue check marks popping up on people with like 2,000 followers that weren't tweeting as much. They didn't have as much energy behind them as these guys like Steffi. There's Tams who's out there, Reseth.
Yeah, you got officially shadow banned, and then you were unshadow banned.
Oh yeah, but who knows?
It's remained some kind of weird reach.
Oh well, I keep losing followers even though we're doing this, which is
you've been less active on that.
I have, and I'm sure that's part of the algorithm.
I am now at 212 followers.
Yeah,
in 4 months.
That's not bad.
It's grueling to get followers.
I think
I've been tweeting at Yang all day. The presidential, what's his first name? I don't even remember.
Andrew
Andrew Yang.
Yeah.
Just tweeting at him all day, trying to get followers by annoying him, and it doesn't work.
Well, I there's something to be said for that. There's also something to be said for being positive. But I'll tell you, one of the big things that will help push you is when you find somebody that's got 100,000 followers that follows you and wants to promote you and put you out there. Like that's a powerful thing.
Maybe that's it. Twitter, I feel like you can tell people's personalities faster.
Yeah.
Because of the type of interaction. That is something that Steffi is very generous with who she promotes. I guess maybe not everybody. She's been very generous just sharing like the rebellion stuff all the time.
Right.
Which is cool.
Yeah. And that's what I loved about Twitter. I got a little jaded, and I'm sure, like after, talking about it, I wish I had more time. I'll tell you, Banks, with everything that we're doing, man, between producing the show, now starting to produce some video on top of it, like on top of kids and a wife and a career and some other things that I'm working on in the background that nobody's really aware of. Like this is
you keeping things from me, Shane?
No, you know everything. Not everybody else knows everything. All be revealed in time. But it's I don't have the time sometimes for things like that. And
I mean, I've told you this before. Like you have a demanding job and 3 kids and a wife, and I sometimes feel overwhelmed. And I've got a cat.
No, it's principles.
Principals does take a lot of attention.
It does, yeah, I'm sure. But it's been a cool night too, man. For those of you guys that don't know out there, we've had a little bit of a gap between the end of the interview and in between recording this part of the podcast, and it's part of what Banks and I like to do. You know, it's what we used to do a lot more. It's where we can kind of just chill out. We sit around out back at my house, have some dinner. Tonight was brats. I think they're all right.
It was good.
Yeah.
I like brats.
Yeah, just smoke some brats and some hot dogs for the kids and all that fun stuff, and sit around and hang out back underneath the lights and kind of just really chill out. Have a drink or two of bourbon or something like that. Kids are out back. I mean, it kind of brought me back to being a kid tonight. Where I remember running around at night during the summer and springtime when it was something different about running around and being kind of free at night, and to watch, my boys, especially out there tonight. My little girl got a little tired and decided to hit the hay. She's kind of like that. But the little boys, man, they were just tearing up and down the back entrances out there and having, together, by themselves, having a good time, entertaining each other like they were the only two kids in the world. Like, that's something that I remember doing with my little brother, and I'm sure that in the future they'll remember that kind of stuff. And then the conversations, with you and Jim and Meredith, kind of just sitting back, like that's the type of stuff I hope in the future. If it's not too much where you got to unplug and you're not creating content all the damn time, but like I think some of those conversations are worth putting out to people. Like if we had the ability to record ourselves sitting around and having some of these conversations, I think that in itself is just one of those really cool things that I think people would tune into.
There's definitely this aspect of like you have a hammer and everything looks like a nail. So
yeah.
Like we have a podcast and everything looks like content.
Yeah.
But it happens all the time. We're like, oh, that would have been a good thing to record.
Yeah.
It's because when you're naturally just living life and you're surrounded by people who like to think and just are living their normal life without paying attention, amazing things happen all the time.
Yeah.
The fact that we have that recording of Sawyer saying, don't hurt people and don't take their stuff is lucky, because your kids say hilarious or very insightful things all the time.
Or I wish I could get a lot more of that content.
You should strap GoPros to their heads.
They'll kill me as they're adults, and that's the thing is like there's some things I want to flirt with here in the future, and some of the content, and I'll just come out and say it. There's part of me that would love to get up on a stage and do some stand up. Like there's a big part of me that thinks that there's a lot of I don't know, usefulness in comics these days, right?
Oh,
like,
of course,
their ability to just absolutely highlight the ridiculous in society and point things out that should be pointed out, but do it so in a very human way. It's not that you necessarily want to be offensive or cruel or any of that kind of stuff, but God, the hilarity that is the human experience and the tragic comedy that it is. It just seems so simple, and everybody's got a different point of view, right? And a couple drinks in and you're feeling pretty good and you can get up there on stage. I was talking to Banks about it a little bit earlier, and some of the things that I'll share with Banks will make him uncomfortable, and rightfully so.
Yeah, I said if Shane can go on stage and talk about these things that should, like, if you're a normal person, you should feel a little bit uncomfortable. If not, there might be a problem with you. But if you can go on stage and talk about those things confidently, without flinching, people are going to only have two options. They're either going to have to get up and leave, or they're going to have to laugh, because if not, there's too much tension. It must be released.
Yeah, it's got to be released and best through laughter. So
yeah,
I don't know. That's why like when I saw that Gina, who does most of our artwork for the show, is down at like the Laughing Skull Lounge and things like that. Like, I want to learn that. I want to be exposed to those type of things and see how it works and see how things like stand-up routines get going, and
It's funny. The other day we were talking about that, and I was like, well, Dave Smith, who I really like, he has an episode where he really went deep into that, and he's like, it can take like 10 years until I became like a good comic. You do like 10 hours of comedy, and really you distill that to like maybe 2 good jokes. And I was like, Shane, you got to be careful. First thing, I want to keep your focus on the podcast. Second thing, that's a good thing to be aware of. But then I was listening to Joe Rogan the other day. He was interviewing a guy named Wim Hof, who I am going to mention a few times in the future because it's just fascinating. But Wim is like all into this breathing method and so forth, but he likes comedy too. And he tries to make jokes. And, oh no, it's another guy on Joe Rogan. But anyways, this other guy on Joe Rogan, and Joe's like, you know what? You've got above average intelligence. You've got this wit to you. You should just go do it. You could be successful.
Yeah.
And to see those two extremes, like Dave, who's like, well, it takes some time to get some good jokes. That doesn't happen overnight.
Yeah.
You think you're funny, then 5 years later, you're like, that guy, like I was stupid 5 years ago.
Right.
And Joe's like, I feel it in you.
Well,
do it.
Well, and that's and I feel that's also kind of that Gary Vee thing coming out, right? Like, just go do it. Don't let anybody tell you can't do something. If you're passionate about it, if it makes you happy,
if it makes you happy, you should do it.
Right. Oh well, some things, right?
Within the confines of liberty, yes, of course.
But yeah,
I actually think here's a theory. I've thought about this before. I should have expressed it on a podcast. I haven't, but I think that if you're doing something bad to other people, it doesn't actually make you happy. You might have the illusion that it's making you happy.
Right.
But if you're doing what is categorically wrong, and there is a wrong and right, and I think we've got like our thumb on the pulse to at least some degree. But if you're doing something categorically wrong, even if you think that like you're enjoying doing it because you're a psycho or a weirdo, deep down you're not actually enjoying it.
Yeah, that's when I look at people like Samantha Bee, who does comedy, in a very, I don't know.
I was going in a different direction,
in a very different way than
like murders and so forth.
No. I know what I'm trying to do is bring it back to comedy.
You went too weird there, Banks.
I see that, and I see like this just mean spirit. There's nothing. There's a laugh at somebody else's expense always, right? And
they're playing a system. Systems by themselves aren't funny.
Well,
there's a system. Yeah. System is like Orange Man bad. You say Orange Man bad. You're
part
popular.
Of the club. Yeah.
We put clap sign.
Right.
And there's nothing funny about that.
No.
It's that making fun of it.
Yeah, and that's that's I don't think she's really a happy person to begin with. If she was a happy person, it would be one of those things where her whole existence wouldn't be predicated on something so trivial as a guy who just happens to be the president of the United States.
I tweeted an awesome quote like that just the other day. It's by Francis Chan. And I can't remember who Francis Chan was. It popped up in my Facebook memories or something. But it's an awesome quote, and it says, if I can find it, come on, Banks. Twitter. I'm too active on Twitter, Shane.
You got so many posts going.
So many tweets. I didn't know.
You're Twitterific.
I didn't know how Twitter worked. It literally took me a learning curve to know how Twitter worked just 4 months ago.
Yeah, and then you'll kind of find the intricacies to it. Yeah,
oh, here it is. Our greatest fear should not be of failure, but of succeeding at things in life that don't really matter.
Yeah. I mean, it's brilliant.
It's brilliant.
Don't ever be afraid to fail at something. Fail until you get it, or fail until you find what you're supposed to be doing. Failure is not a bad thing. I don't know.
Failure is awesome.
Yeah. Well, failure is if you can learn from each one of them. It's not failure. It's a learning curve, is what it is.
Learning curve. Do a little bit more prep with your video stuff before the beginning of a podcast.
And that's the thing is with experience, you gain so much more than if you just were to hypothesize or talk about something. If you just take that that little bit of initiative to take that first step in doing whatever it is you're passionate about, whatever you love, like that first step is the hardest thing to do. And then you find yourself almost fully involved and whatever that first step was, and you starting to learn immediately from failure, or from or maybe and probably not success, but it's that experience versus the thought of it, the talking about it, the hypothesizing. It's not even close in terms of what you will learn.
So if experience is like the metric, we should only let like people over 60 vote.
Oh God, that generation's blown it for everybody.
Okay, fine. Only
Generally.
people over 60 whose name starts with an R, his middle name starts with an E, his last name starts with a P.
R-E-P, huh?
Yeah.
Reap.
Ronald Ernest Paul.
I know. How could it be anybody else? Yeah, no, I mean,
We've gone down a rabbit hole here.
we have, but
We should do more night episodes.
This is the personal side of the rebellion that I love, man. Just the hanging out, the friendly banter back and forth, dropping, more, less of the business and more of the human. I mean,
so that's what life would be about. Like if there wasn't so much tyranny, what would we do? We'd just be living like normal life.
well, I would like to think that if we've talked about this too, where if you're not worried about time, and I talked about this with Meredith not long ago, like if you're not really worried about time, you don't know what day of the week it is. You're not really on anybody else's schedule. You're not worried about waking up at a certain time or any of that kind of stuff. Like true, real freedom. Like you're living your life day to day without that concern, just taking care of the necessities of what needs to happen. That's a different type of life, man. And think about that. Like one of my favorite things to do is go down there around that fire with my wife or with my family, hang out and have really great conversations, tell stories. And, I was telling one, it was a pretty interesting week. I was up in Canada this week in the middle of nowhere, but on my way up there, I ran into a guy that most people know as Gimli. And
Is it Gimli or Grimly?
Gimli.
I think it's Gimli.
See, I'm not a Lord of the Rings fan.
I'm not either.
And I got bumped up to first class, and I got to sit next to this guy for 3 hours. He's, for those of you guys that don't know who he is because you don't follow Lord of the Rings either, his name is John Rhys Davies, and he is a really nice guy. He played the guy that Indiana Jones meets in Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Shala, right?
And what's that?
Sala or Shala?
Sala, yeah, I think is his name. It's been a while since
I've never
actually
seen Indiana Jones. I just looked it up.
Well, it's funny. One of my best friends, I was telling Banks earlier, my buddy Justin. I mean, it's like every time I see the guy, it's a quote that says "Indy," or he's quoting the other guy that's like, "Follow me, I know the way," because we're always going off and doing something, and somebody's got to lead. So anyway, I got to sit next to this guy. And I really didn't know who he was for quite a while, and it was just, it was a great conversation, and to be able to share that with everybody. I think he's coming on the show at some point. We had a great conversation, and to get to know somebody, in a different capacity than I think most people look at them, and I don't know, how are you going to feel, Banks, when you're getting on the planes and you're sitting in first class and somebody sits down beside you and they know who you are, man?
I don't know if that's ever going to happen.
Why do you? But I think it will. I think it for sure will.
I mean, if it happens, that's cool. It means that we'll be able to spread liberty even better, which is just the goal in the first place.
But what if they don't know who you are? And the thing, like, at that point, like, I mean, this guy,
I would imagine people like that must appreciate the moment when people don't know them, but there's a connection
just get
anyways.
to be a person. Yeah.
And there's a connection anyways. Like, oh, that connection didn't happen because I'm famous. It
Right.
happened because
It's just organic.
something else.
Yeah.
Same thing for rich people. Like, a lot of people might forget that, but if you have a lot of money, it tends to attract a lot of people around you. And I imagine
For the wrong reasons
I'm
a
not
lot
rich
of times.
myself, that
Yeah.
you may not trust why people are nice to you or people interact with you or so forth.
I had never considered that until the other day, and we were talking about it, and it was one of those things that it made me understand a little bit more. And it's one of those things, one of those very peculiar nuances that it's out there, and I don't know. There's this human element that I hope, for the life of me, as this thing grows, that we never lose, and that, we keep. But to go back and to really be able to sit around like we get to do and tell stories and hang out and sit around a fire as a family and friends and all that kind of stuff. Like if that's all I ever had to do, and I don't have to complain about tyranny and all that stuff, man, that'd be ideal. That would be picture perfect most nights for me. Just sit around, hang out with the family as long as you can till people are starting to fade off and go to bed, man.
Well, we came to a conclusion, what was it, 2 or 3 months ago, when we had just been, every time we saw each other was just like working on the podcast and that's it. And we realized, we need some downtime. Because if not, even though we enjoy what we do, it's
a job.
Yeah.
It's a lot of work.
But if we ever get to the point of like the size that we've talked about, like all the possibilities, different ranks and so forth.
Only need 37,000 people.
37,000 people.
Seems like a mountain right now, doesn't it?
That's our new number there.
That's
we went from wanting 1,000 to 37,000.
Hey, 37,000 in this space. That's not a lot, man.
It's a fraction of a fraction. But so they said on Shark Tank, sometimes somebody will come on Shark Tank.
Yeah.
And they'll be like, the industry is like $9 billion. So if I get just like 0.1% of that, and Mark Cuban loves to look at them and be like,
you're an idiot.
Horrible argument.
Yeah. Well, it's not even an argument. It's one of those
horrible justification.
Yeah.
Plan.
We're not saying that. I'm saying that's a goal. And, I hope 37,000 is one of those things where we come and go and remember that number 37,000? Ha! That was great.
I think what we'll remember as well is, remember when we used to be able to be like, oh yeah, Quest and Gina and Aaron, and we'll be able to like remember those people that we know quite intimately now.
Yeah.
And at that point, we won't be able to know people intimately. It'll be just as cool because we'll be able to influence a larger number of people, but we'll be detached from the.
Well, yeah, you're gonna have your the people that come in first, and that's one thing I'm really, really proud and happy about is, we've picked up some diehards, and I absolutely love them. They interact, they share, they are so kind with their praise and with their donations, and
their intentions are so pure.
Yeah, it's
like ours, I would hope. I think that's why it's funny, I've never thought this either, but I tell people that the Ron Paul movement, diversity isn't necessarily a wonderful thing, but the thing that kind of bound us all together was just like our pure, like innocent intentions. And we just happened to be a very eclectic group. And the only other time I'd ever experienced that was playing online games, World of Warcraft.
Yeah.
I played with people like across the world, and I played with them a lot, and I got to know who they were, and they're just like the most eclectic group ever.
Right.
But there was this innocence that we just all wanted to like cooperate in this game and play together and have fun. And this is a little bit like that. You
know what's funny is I actually saw something, I don't know if it was on Twitter, it was on one of the social medias the other day, and I thought it was brilliant. Just a casual observation.
Social media is bad, Shane.
Oh, it's terrible.
Boo.
Yeah, let's shut down these liberty voices. And it was somebody, I think, fairly large in this movement, and I wish I could attribute it to him, but at any rate, what they said was, when I hire people, I don't look for diversity. I look for talent and desire to work, somebody that's trainable. Mm-hmm. And when I do that, diversity takes care of itself. And I was like, that is a powerful statement. Like that in itself describes exactly what's within everybody. And, to wrap this up in a nice little bow, to see, a young lady in Steffi Cole
Good job there, Shane.
To see what she is putting together, what she's doing, and I said this, I think it was after the campaign was over, and we were looking to the future as kind of a liberty movement, like, who's it going to be, what's going on, and I said right out of the bat, I said, you know what, Steffi Cole, she's got it. She's that person that can go out there and she can communicate, and she does it with a smile on her face, and she's just one of those people that I think is going to help propel this whole movement to the future. I think it's I have no doubt, and I have no doubt that there are literally hundreds of thousands of people out there that could do this kind of thing if they just follow their passion, which they work tirelessly towards, which will make them happy in the end.
Yeah, asking her questions, you can just tell that it's that same thing, just like a genuine, kind of innocent, just desire to, like, I like liberty, I like to do this full time, but I'm just following what seems good right in front of me. Yeah. And that's really cool, which is kind of what we do.
Yep, that's it. It's pretty easy recipe.
Nice bow there, Shane.
Thank you very much.
Follow Steffi on all her social media. Her Sundays with Steffi on the libertarianrepublic.com, which is run by Austin Peterson, who's also been on the show.
Twitter is at Steffi_Cole.
And all her other YouTubes and so forth are whatever.
Sure, you can find everything
Steffi
from those places.
Cole. And thanks for coming on the show, Steffi.
Yep.
And thank you guys for listening. If you want to support the podcast, you can go to patreon.com/rebellionpod. If you have any comments, questions, constructive criticism, or just like criticism, you can send them to info@rebellionpod.com.
Get out there, leave us some reviews. For God's sakes, I'm struggling for reviews, Banks.
You're making Shane's conspiracy mind just run
I got
like
that,
crazy.
It was that Dave Chappelle itch on my neck. Like, y'all got any more of them reviews out there? Go out there and leave us a 5-star review if you found any anything valuable in this show on Apple. You can go out there through whatever platform you want. You can also leave reviews on Facebook, which will also help us there. And this has been The Rebellion, your place for peace, liberty, and free markets.
We need you. We love you.
Peace.
Don't hurt people and don't take their stuff.